guests. We have Will Harris joining us from France. Will is the co-skipper of Malizia and has sailed many times with Boris, including in the ocean race, where he also skippered some of the legs. Thanks for joining, Will.
Good to be here again, guys. Good to see you on a new week in the Vendée.
Yeah, it's flown by. We also joined by Cole Brauer, who is in the US. Cole, as many of you know, has sailed solo around the world, winning and breaking many records, fastest person around the world in a class 40. And Cole has been mentoring with Team Malizia for the last month, so has got the inside scope.
Thanks for having me. Super excited.
And we have our new guest with us today, Scott Stevenson. Scott is joining us from Jersey in the Channel Islands. And Scott is a mindset specialist who has worked with many CEOs, governments, elite athletes, including Boris, MMA fighters, big wave surfers, you name it. So his expertise focuses on mental agility, resilience, composure, and fostering that winning mindset. So, as I mentioned before the Vendée, Scott did some sessions with Boris. He can't do any now because the ability to do training, mental training, ends the minute Boris starts the Vendée. But it's great to have you with us. Thanks, Scott.
Pleasure to be here. Yeah, lovely to see you all. Thank you.
So this week, as most of you probably guess, we will be starting with the mindset of this race. It's a pretty intense, crazy race, 80 days alone around the world. So many elements that we're going to touch on today, and the experiences, of course, of Will and Cole as well. And then the second half of the show, we're going to be looking at the strategy. So that will be the weather, what's been happening, and what we predict for the future. So to kick off, we are going to start with our routine. From 1 to 10, how is everyone feeling? We're going to start with you, Will, and why?
Oh, I'm first. Okay. This week, so I'd say today I'm about a 7. I think I've got 2 reasons for this. Firstly, I've got a very pregnant wife at home right now who's very ready to have a baby. So emotions are running high, so to speak. But no, all's good there. And I think also I'd love to see Boris work his way back up into the top 20 after coming back nice and strong midway through last week. He's dropped back a little bit at the moment, but as we'll find out later in the show, we'll see how we can change that in the future.
Nice. And Scott, as our new guest, how are you feeling from 1 to 10?
I think, yeah, about a 6 or a 7. So, because there's a long way to go. And if I was too high on the 10s forever, then I might lose concentration and we might miss a few things. So,
Nice.
But I can't go less than a 5. I'll wake up at a 5 at least. So I'm fine.
Nice. And Cole?
I think I'm a 9, like a 9.5. I'm pretty good. I mean, I'm back in the States running around doing errands for my next journey. So, but it's beautiful and it's warm in Fort Lauderdale, so I can't really complain, to be honest.
Very nice. Yeah, I'm up there too. I think I'm a 9.5. I'm enjoying the race, touch wood, no major issues yet. We're here together. It's really nice. So I am going to kick off on the mindset topic with a little video that caught our attention, especially Cole and mine, I think, this week, which was all about mindset. And when you watch the video, it's in French, but there are subtitles at the bottom of the screen. So read those if you don't speak French. And this is 2 sailors in exactly the same conditions, but having totally different experiences of those conditions. So we're going to just play that now.
Magnifique nuit.
On a passé une bonne nuit de merde.
Regardez comme il fait beau. C'est la pleine lune.
Nuit super dur, pas pu dormir évidemment.
Les copains sont par là. On distancé un peu, mais à cause des nuages. Mais on arrive.
Ouais, avec Charlie, on a dû s'entraîner et Charlie s'en sort encore plus mal que moi. Là.
C'est superbe.
Cole and I loved this video. We were like texting each other like, this is amazing, because it really puts it into perspective, right, Cole?
Yeah, it's really, you can really grab onto the difference between, like, you're on very, very similar boats in almost the same exact conditions, and you can have someone who's like, oh yeah, this guy is slightly passing me, but it's fine, I'm enjoying the night, to, you know, to
mental breakdown.
I haven't slept, I hate everybody, you know, blah, blah, blah. Like, and it's just, it all goes down to mindset when it comes down to it.
Exactly. And I think that's really like our first question or our first point. Like this race, I think people don't appreciate quite how crazy it is. You know, you are totally alone on this boat. You are careering through the ocean. Things can break. It's cold. It's wet. You're hungry. I mean, maybe Cole, you can tell us a bit more about how challenging this is, and all without like really any support. You have almost no input in this race from anyone.
Yeah, so on my race, I was allowed to have input, and so I think I was able to get through like the mental difficulty a little bit easier because I could talk to people about how I was feeling and they could give me encouragement. But it's very different with the Vendée, where there's so many different rules. You have to be incredibly careful about what you say to Boris or really any other skipper. And so in that way, I think that you have to be 100% ready to go before you even leave for the start. You have to be so mentally strong. For me, it's like I could kind of learn as I go how to be mentally strong. But with this race, you have to kind of like jump straight into it. And yeah, it's not just physically strong, it's mentally strong for 80 days. A lot.
It's a lot, exactly. And maybe, Scott, you could just give us a little bit of info about what it is you do and how this compares in particular to other sports or other areas you've coached in, you know, the Vendée Globe. You're entering this world, I guess, a bit from the outside. So maybe from your perspective.
So first of all, what do I do? I suppose ultimately my job is to work myself out of the job. So my job is to empower people so they can actually deal with situations for themselves, which is perfectly aligned for, you know, Boris, Will and Cole's chosen path. And I work with CEOs, I work with children in schools as well, and work with school leaders, so children with specific education needs. I work in the world of extreme sport, whether that be like the UFC or big wave surfers and Ironman events. And I also, work with, I suppose, governments that are looking to challenge the mindset and cultures of their employees and people. It's quite vast, basically. It's a banquet of things. With regards to your world, absolutely crazy. It really blows my mind. I'm perfectly built for this, I'm sure. It is. I'm trying to compare it, and it's been really difficult. It certainly stands in a unique setting. The task, the level of mind-blowing pain and endurance that's required, and to keep a composure in that. And yeah, it's unique. Some things are maybe high altitude mountaineering, maybe that, but you also generally have a team with you. You're not solo. When I think of like the UFC, the person fights by themselves, but they also can have a team that gives them instructions along the way, which you're not allowed, of course, with your game. It's really, really difficult. It's unique, but yeah, it certainly takes, I don't know, that cross between genius and insanity, I think. But there we go. But you're both, it's an amazing community. That's another thing. It's an incredible community. That blew me away. I love that you do help each other. And so that's a family, I think, because the stakes are so high, something very special about that. So, yeah.
Definitely. And for a race like this, it's, you know, only every 4 years. So that's also something that people forget. Like you put so much pressure maybe into this 4-year cycle. You know, we have other races, but the pinnacle is the Vendée Globe. Yeah, super nice. Maybe Will and Cole, you could talk us through, Cole first, maybe one challenges you've experienced so far, your biggest challenge as a solo sailor so far.
So I think mine actually was during my previous race around the world, and I had cracked my ribs. I was thrown across the boat. I had autopilot issues, and then my most important sensor on the entire boat, the rudder reference, which controls where the rudder is in space, that died all within like 3 days. And I had to make a choice between going back to South Africa or then going the month to across the Indian Ocean to Australia and trying to get to port. And I called my mother and crying hysterically, of course. And she was like, well, and she knows nothing about sailing, but she was like, yes, just, you have to keep going. Like, whatever, just, fix it and make it happen. Like, you're not going to take the time penalty or, never start the race again. Like, you just have to keep going. And it's amazing that, like, that was my biggest challenge. But Boris doesn't have that opportunity, and neither does any other skipper. You can't, even like his mother or wife cannot say, just keep going, because that's actually giving assistance. So that's actually kind of totally insane that like you can't even have someone who knows literally zero about sailing give you encouragement. So even my biggest challenge was like a tiny little subsection of like what Boris has to deal with.
Nice. And how about for you, Will?
Yeah, no, I think it's it's a really interesting question. One thing that always springs to mind is that repair that it wasn't actually a solo repair. It was a repair that we did together as a team during leg 3 of the ocean race last year, where 5 days after leaving Cape Town, we had this terrible rip at the top of the mast when one of the sails broke and fell in the water, and we had to climb the mast and together it took us 2 days to repair. And it was, at the start we were literally rock bottom of the of our feeling. We thought we were gonna have to turn back. It was really terrible. And then by the end of it, we were like sky high, having managed to repair the mast and know that we were going to be able to sort of catch up and eventually win the leg. That was kind of the most incredible part, being able to actually overtake. And I think a lot of it was thanks to what happened in that moment. Thanks to the fact that we started in such a low point and were able to sort of climb our way back up. But certainly in that moment when we first found out about the damage, it was we weren't feeling in a good place at all.
And you
I
were
think
sick as well, right?
yeah, exactly. Yeah, and Cape Town, after sort of already being at sea for 20 or 30 days, I had a terrible mouth infection at the same time. And actually, I remember going up the mast for the first time and being sort of swung around, slammed into the place, and coming back down and saying, "Can you put me back up there, because my mouth's in absolute agony." And actually, being up the mast totally distracts me from it altogether.
Oh my God, you're mental.
one of those moments, isn't it? But I think one thing that's really interesting is that was 5 days into a 35-day race, and it's about where Boris is at now in his race. He's less than 10% of the way into this race, and if it's already been a week of sailing, and it's I think that mindset is probably the hardest moment of the race mentally, because you've got such a long way to go, and it feels like you've already been at sea for such a long time. So yeah, it's a really interesting moment mentally, I think, for the race as well.
Definitely. And Scott, like from what you're hearing here, from what you've seen of the race, of Boris, like how do you help people? What's your thoughts around helping people in these extreme conditions?
Yeah, well, there's an element of what runs through is to be able to use, I would say, the science of composure, to understand that, and then the art of composure, because I can't teach anybody, obviously, in their sport anything more than they already know. But I can help them understand themselves better. So actually how the body works, how the nervous systems work, how that affects their decision making, how that enables them to deal with high emotional events and perceived pressure, and then also to be able to, how do you say, how to be able to navigate their way in the moment. You already know eventually where you want to go, to be able to deal in the moment, to deal with the emotions, physiological changes, as well as all the systems around you that are affecting you and really putting you under such great pressure. So yeah, it's I help them by understanding how to work with their body, because if you can't work with your body, you can't access the mind, and then your skill and decision making is undervalued.
Nice. And in the preparation of this, we were talking a little bit about this 1 foot in front of the other idea, which I really liked. I don't know, maybe Scott, you can talk us through that, but it resonated a lot with me.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the fact of, I think there's a romanticism that's built around sailing around the world, as it might be for climbing a mountain. The reality is, and I can talk about climbing mountains at least, and speaking with Cole and Will and Boris and Alex Thompson, it's not romantic. It's blood, sweat, and tears and doubt. And eventually, there's no emotion left. There's no pride. There's no energy. There's nothing left, because often you've done the most difficult thing you've ever done and you've surpassed it. You've passed every single goal that you've set, and there's nothing left to prove. You still want to achieve something, but there is no drive. So it's simply, as it was Dr. Mike Stroud actually in Survival of the Fittest, who went pole to pole with Ranulph Fiennes. And he said it's simply a case of putting 1 foot in front of the other. And that definitely does get you to the next place.
Definitely. I think that was something you guys both experienced as well, right, Cole and Will? This like bloody determination.
Yeah, I think that putting one foot in front of the other is really the only way that you can do it. And my race, I never thought about the finish line until I was about a week out of the finish line, and that was torturous because you're mentally now you're a week away and you're counting the minutes. And that you can't do that on an 80-day race, or mine was 130, or you would go insane and your face would show it. You wouldn't be able to control your sleep patterns, and you would start to fall apart, not eat, not sleep, not take care of yourself, stop communicating with the outside world, and you go aloof. You have to be able to only focus on what you're doing that day, or it could be incredibly dangerous. You could miss a footing and fall overboard, or whatever it may be, or just make little tiny mistakes that can lead to much bigger things, especially if you can't stop at this nonstop race.
Definitely. No, for sure. And I think touching on another mindset topic is a little video here. I'm just going to play.
I'm alone, but I know you're there, so I'm not fully alone. Cheers, guys.
So there is Boris putting it in his own words, alone, but not really alone. We all know that that was a really big issue for Boris in the last Vendée Globe. He suffered massively with the loneliness element, 80 days fully alone, not something he had really had to confront before. What techniques, in your opinion, Scott, like this is quite a unusual sport to be so alone, but is there sort of techniques that you can help with? What is it that what do you say to that? How do you help?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, because I mean, ultimately you need a purpose underneath. It reminds me basically of survival stories, which it seems to link to your sport, where the people that do survive, first of all, on that end of the spectrum, they've got a purpose, they've got a reason to live, to go on. And that's the initial, that has to be the first instinct, surviving. Then after that, it's such a long way to be just in survival mode for that amount of time is going to be miserable, and it's only going to make you kind of deplete further. So moving towards that thriving spectrum, then it's a connection of how far you go, whether you're by yourself, you will then start to look inwardly. So I start to see then there's a connection of how you deal with yourself, what's your self-image. Things come like, well, how can I improve what I want to do in my life? What have I done wrong? And also the people, like which people now are really important to me, because when you're away and you're isolated, you start to truly see the importance of friends, family, passions, and these kind of things. So to be able to connect with that. And then I think moving forward that there's a point of you've got to understand where you're going. You want to know why you're going to do it. And then also you then bring into the skills, the art of composure, being able to relax the mind and the body. And then you can start looking towards a state of thriving. What are you going to achieve by the end of this? Is this something that's bigger than you? And often that's another thing to deal with loneliness. And I can remember, I obviously can't talk about the things I spoke with Boris, but the point is we say, you're not alone. You're also connected. And just the thought of thinking of the person that, you love, or your team, your community, you can't help but then feel imbibed by that. So, yeah, maybe that's a deeper philosophical answer, because I could spend a long time on this one. Yeah.
Yeah, like he's literally alone, but like mentally, and all of us are with him so much. I mean, we think about him so much, it's crazy. And I think he feels that so strongly, also with the public. Like we send him a lot of the messages, like from all of these videos he does. And I think that's part of his motivation of doing them, is because he feels a lot from the people, actually, to help with that loneliness. Definitely.
Yeah, you're never alone. Yeah.
Exactly. I really liked this clip of him. I'm going to save it. Send it to him when he feels lonely. So we talk now, of course, about being in the race, but there's maybe a more challenging mindset problem is when the race ends prematurely for you. We've seen that now with Maxime Sorel. We've also seen Louis Burton have a lot of damage to the boat. Like that is also a crazy thing to have to handle. And I think one of the characteristics there is resilience. So maybe it's even one of the key components of a race like the Vendée Globe, being resilient. is that something that can be learnt, Scott, or is that something that you determine yourself? And how do you think that plays into a race like this?
Yeah, it can definitely be learned. There's components to resilience. There's also still coming back, all roads lead to Rome. You still have to want to do it and know why you want to do it. That has to be there because there's no point in being resilient. You'll run out. And, within the Vendée Globe as well, from the more and more I learn, it reminds me of the tortoise and the hare. So there's no point in just going on those rocky moments of running up the stairs. I've made it because there's just too many of them. There's too many tasks over those days. So resilience is again understanding your body and knowing how it works, because then you're able to control it better. You're able to reduce its output and just use the amount of energy required for that task as often as possible. So even though you're doing an extraordinary feat, it's actually full of ordinary steps. And the highest performers in the world are able to use extraordinary steps continually, regardless of the circumstance. And so, yeah, there's kind of, again, it's another entire episode on resilience, which I'm sure we'll go to. I'll go in more detail. I'd love to. So yeah, it definitely can be learned. There's agility, there's also adaptability, and there's a purpose to it. And you can never, ever underestimate the power of the body and understanding why it's having those reactions. And you're going to use it so you can use it as an energy efficient vehicle throughout that time. As I said, the tortoise and then the hare springs to mind for me on this one.
Yeah, super nice. Well, thank you very much, Scott, for joining us. That's the end of this section. We go on to now the strategy, the weather, what's been happening. But it was great to have your insights. Thanks so much, Scott.
Thank you very much. Love to see you all again. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
So now on to what is happening in the race. The boats are honestly still quite close together. I would say they're sort of spread out in this line. Will, what are you thinking? Is this a second restart? What's the overview of the last days? And tell us, is 175 nautical miles from the leader that bad?
Yeah, no, it's I mean, a roller coaster of emotions, I think. Firstly, Boris at the start there, he was 40th the first night, and then 3 days after the start, he was like, I think third at one point on the tracker.
Yeah, third at one point.
He was definitely in the top 10 for a long time, and now he's dropped back a little bit again, and it's really been a very like untypical sort of trade winds area. I guess that area from Finisterre down to where they are now by the Cabo Verde Islands. It's been downwind that entire way since the start, which is like very, very rarely happens, but it's also meant they've had very bad trade winds. And there's a little cut-off low, which is the reason for this happening, and we can have a little look at that later. But right now, 165 miles from Boris to first place. In the grand scheme of things, he's less than 10% of the way through the race. It's, if we look back to the last Vendée Globe, at one point, Louis Berton was more than 1,000 miles away from the leader and from the front pack, and he managed to come back to finish second, only 2 hours behind first place. It's the Vendée Globe. We've got to remember that. It's snakes and ladders is really what comes to mind. Sometimes it's going to stretch out. Sometimes you're going to have these bigger parts where you get big separations between the fleet, and sometimes it's going to seem much more bunched together. So although it 165 miles sounds like a lot, if you really look at the tracker, it's a big bunch of boats all together. And Boris is definitely still in the fight with a long way to go still. So I think he's still certainly up there.
Still very much in the running, yeah. And Cole, did you have a moment like during your race where you were like really far behind, or you were having like, oh God, how am I gonna catch up? Or
yeah, in these types of races, you go back and forth a lot with your competitors, as we have seen in the Vendée. And in my previous race around the world, I started and was incredibly sick, and I threw up for about 2 days straight. And so I was not really a human, and I was supposed to be tacking at about 50 knots of breeze. And so that means that you're moving your stack from side to side, which is about 1,000 pounds of weight. And I could barely like lift my own body up, like off the ground. So of course, like I got incredibly headed and started pointing at Iceland, and there was nothing that I could do about it because I physically was not there. And so of course I got passed by a bunch of competitors on the inside near like Portugal. and they were just like tacking and jibing and making it look really easy, and I was over here like not pointing in the correct direction. And then I ended up finally tacking and getting into nice weather, that then the breeze went aft and I set the chute, and I passed like, I don't know, 4 or 5 boats in a couple days just by like holding on and picking my weather system. So yes, I looked terrible for a while, and my team and probably the rest of the world that was following me was like, does she know how to sail? Like at all? Like, did she just sign up for something that she's not prepared for? And then I ended up passing everyone right back, but it just,
So nice.
yeah.
They're like, go south.
They were like, we would like you to go towards where you're supposed to go, please. Like, why are you pointed like that way?
So
You
good.
have to
Yeah, I
always
guess.
sail your own race, don't you?
Yeah, sail your own race. Exactly.
Yeah, don't read the comment section of your Instagram ever during that. They are brutal. They were brutal to me. And then once I tagged and like started winning, then they were like, "Oh, we love you." So it changes really
It all
quickly.
makes sense, yeah.
Yeah, and I think Boris still has a very long way to go, but I guess we hand over to Will, who's going to tell us way more with Weather with
Yes.
Will.
Yeah, sure.
Lots of people's favorite segment.
Try and give my best explanation of what's going on, but really it's very complicated out there. So, so as we were just saying, the last week has been super interesting, super up and down, and very untypical trade winds. So hopefully this map makes sense, but basically the reason for this strange wet weather is because of this cut-off low pressure here. So normally you have all the low pressures like this one up here going across the North Atlantic, and then you've got the high pressure here, and then you get a nice flow like that. But because of this guy right here, it's causing the wind to be super unstable and super light down in the nice sort of trade winds area. This is where the trade winds is normally going from east to west. But all they've had is this light wind mush, which has made it really hard, really unstable. And we've seen sort of some of the boats managing to escape. Sam Goodchild, you've got Nico Lundven here as well. And then there's sort of a pack with Johan Risham and Charlie Dallon a little bit behind. And then we've got this pack over here, all the way out in the east. This is Jean Le Cam and Conrad Coleman. And basically what they've managed to do is they've managed to tuck into the trade winds, which is sort of flowing like this at the moment. So these boats over here in the west, they're not managing to quite get into that wind, but they've touched the new wind. And if we just go to what that looks like on the actual grid file and the tracker, so you've got your 2 bunches here, here's Conrad and Jean Le Cam. They're in this nice flow, and the other boats are still stuck in this cut-off low. And basically, they've gone for the stronger wind, but because of the wind direction, they're going to have to jibe back and forth like this. You can kind of see the routing there makes it look a lot nicer. But the boats over here in the west, once they do touch the new wind, they're on a straight line. So they can go straight like this. And this is really the reason for the boats pushing west, to try and get that straight line and that straight push south. And eventually they'll come down to the doldrums over here. And really the doldrums is like a big triangle. So it kind of like this, it starts quite wide at Africa and then goes narrower. Sorry, my drawing's super bad sometimes, but...
Good explanation, we like it.
You're doing great, Will.
Okay, all right. I won't become an artist yet, but basically Jean Le Cam and Conrad Coleman, they're going to have to come somewhere over here and jibe back and forth to avoid this big band of light winds. This is like the no-go area. And these boats in the west will probably end up shooting nice and fast, especially the foiling boats, and going a lot faster this way. But it's all to play for. We've got to see how this light wind band plays out. You know, it could have them really stuck for a few days for now, or it could be nice to them and let them shoot through quite fast. But one thing that's really interesting is Sam Goodchild out in the front, and maybe a couple of the other boats like Nico. They might touch that new wind first, and then be able to accelerate forward. So those boats further back, unfortunately including Boris as well, they might see those front boats just extend a bit until they get down towards the doldrums. And if you look on the routings, I just kind of did a quick one. At the moment, Charlie's 50 or 60 miles behind Sam, and in 24 hours, this has him being 120 miles behind Sam. So yeah, you know, it's snakes and ladders, like we said earlier. It's still early on in the race, but hopefully the boats will start to pick up the new wind as the trade winds start to fill in nicely from the east again. And then we can have a quick look at the longer term picture. This is a quick routing. It's kind of a rough and dirty routing, I like to call it, where it just gives a quick outline of sort of the trajectory of the boats trying to get into the Southern Ocean and try and pick up. There'll be a bunch of low pressures down here. You have to remember the wind circulates the other way around the low pressures in the south. And they'll be picking up one of those and then taking the train into the Southern Ocean. So yeah, quick first overview. I'm sure people have plenty of questions what's going to happen, but yeah, it's really interesting at the moment, and I think the fleet is so close that it's anyone's game still.
Super nice. Thank you for that. Very, very good insights, Will. It's also helpful for me and probably everyone listening at home. So actually, Boris sent us a drone video not that long ago. It's going to play it very quickly for everyone at home.
There we go.
Here we go. No music edited on it yet, but you can see this was a few hours ago, the conditions Boris is sailing in. There he is in his board shorts.
How nice does that look? Oh,
See?
I'm envious of that for sure. Look at that.
Yeah, it looks beautiful, huh?
Wow.
So yeah, some nice weather at least there for them. Not so cold as here. But he also just after that he deployed a drifter buoy today. So maybe Will, you want to tell us a little bit about this scientific instrument?
Yeah. So the drifter buoys are really important actually. They're kind of they're effectively what it says on the tin there. They drift around the oceans, and they allow scientists to be able to see what's going on in the water. In particular, they're picking up sea surface temperature and also the sea level pressure, which is really important for our weather models. I'm just going to share another quick slide just to explain to you what it actually is. So here we go. Here's a map of the world. And this is the array of the drifter buoys around the world. And Boris has just dropped one of them over in the Atlantic, where he was today. And it's really important that scientists have a big array like this and have people like Boris to contribute to the array to have accurate sampling of the sea level pressure and the sea surface temperature to understand their climate models, and also to understand how humans are actually having impacts on the ocean. So it's really cool that we can contribute in this way, and we can hopefully fill up these sort of empty areas. You can see there's this big empty area which Boris just deployed his drifter buoy in, and hopefully we'll be able to help fill in the gaps.
Perfect, and we have a video of that here.
Hello everyone from Malizia Sea Explorer. We're now going to deploy a drifter buoy. Okay, let's get this overboard. Bring us good measurements.
Nice. So there we go. Bring us good measurements. I like it. You've also deployed a few of these, I think, Will, right?
Yeah. I think we did 3 or 4 of them in the ocean race. Which is, especially in the Southern Ocean, where I don't know if you saw on that map, but there's really sort of 1,000 kilometer square areas where there's no drifter buoys because there's no ships going in these areas. And the one great thing about these races is we sail in places where no one else goes. I'm sure Cole knows very well about that, but there's really no other boats around in a lot of places we sail. And so if we can carry some of these drifter buoys and deploy them in these areas, then it's a really great way we can contribute. And we did this last year, and hopefully we'll keep doing this in the future. So it goes really nicely alongside the measurements from the ocean pack.
Nice, thank you guys. So we have some questions, guys, from the audience. I'm going to ask you a few. We have, what is your guys' favorite weather forecasting software? This is from Bruce Wacker.
Oh, I'm interested to hear what Cole's favorite one is actually.
My favorite software. So I use Windy for everything, and I do pay for the upgraded version so that I can get satellite images pretty much like in the palm of my hand. So when I was racing around the world, I was allowed to use one weather routing and pretty much anything that was available to me, paid, unpaid, whatever it was. And so with Windy, and Starlink, I could pinpoint exactly where I was, and I could see within about 30 minutes of a storm. And then also while looking at the wind gusts, and then connecting it with the satellite images. So then you could actually watch the little spinny things coming towards you, and then look outside and go, okay, that's the cloud that I can see from my satellite and how much breeze it's actually going to bring. So in these really remote areas like the Southern Ocean, satellite images are incredibly important. So windy and having everything at the like in the palm of your hand at all times is amazing. So that's my favorite. That's how I navigated around the planet. I didn't use any fancy software.
And Will?
Yeah, no, I'm a big fan of Windy as well. It's really nice visually to.
No, it's not sponsored by Windy, guys.
Not sponsored by
Oh,
Windy.
he's not sponsored by Windy, but if you would
No,
like,
yeah.
I'm joking.
No, but you just have every variable you could ever imagine, and you can visually put it on a map with your own position, with your own routings, stuff like that. But for actually running routings and sort of analyzing the potential routes, it's tend to take the weather from Squid. Use the program SquidX, and that's where you can get sort of the ECMF, the Arome, the GFS, also the global models, and then combine that with the wave models as well. And it's a really nice way to be able to select all the different variables that you want, and then you import that to your routing software. Adrena mostly is what we're using, and then yeah, you can figure out some routes.
Nice. And do you guys think that the strategy of going south nearer to the coast of Africa is better or not? And maybe you can say, which route would you have done?
I think it's really interesting, this one, because you see Jean Le Cam there really going for it on that one. And in the last Vendée Globe, he was very impressive with his decision making. You know, he always took the simplest, most direct route, and it looks like that's what he's sort of going for here. If you look at it on paper, it is the most direct route going along the African coast, and there's wind there. Two things that you really want, but it's going to be very challenging for them to get across to the west. You know, they really are going to have to be zigzagging back and forth when the others can just go straight down the course. But I wouldn't put him totally out the question yet. I think Jean Le Cam.
Yeah, I like Jean Le Cam's. I think with him being a non-foiler boat, I think that it does make sense for what he's doing. And versus like a foiling boat, you want to get into pretty nice breeze, like 90 to 100 degrees true, and just send it. Versus with a non-foiler, like I am a non-foiler at heart, so I understand what he's trying to do is like cut down the time. And yes, you have to do far more maneuvers, but he seems to understand non-foilers pretty well. So just like what you said, I wouldn't write him off. I think that if it was me, I probably would have picked the outside boats just because it's a solo race. And even though you have to be in a little bit of light wind for a while, it's okay because you want to have like straight trade winds so that you can actually catch up on sleep before you get to the Southern Ocean. Like getting as much sleep as possible is like number one for me.
Yeah, lots of other things to factor in then, basically.
Yeah.
So we are going to move on quickly to the promo section. Quick answers on this one. So promo section, I thought, what was your favorite offshore like food brand or favorite thing to eat offshore, and why? Cole first.
Oh gosh, so I love this company called Packet Gourmet. They are a family-run company in Texas, and so they produce freeze-dried food, and all of their produce and poultry and beef is from their farm, and it's low sodium, low sugar. It's got exactly the amount of calories that you need. So I absolutely love them, and there's this great one called ostentatious tortilla soup, and I probably ate that every single day. So anything with like salty, like tortillas and like some beans and rice, like
every day.
I'm still American. Like I still love Mexican food. Like I grew up with like Dominican food. So like, yes.
Nice. Okay, and Will, is it an English classic or?
Yeah, it's a Yorkshire classic actually.
Oh my gosh.
Oh.
Yorkshire, and it's called Chia Charge. And basically what they are is they're these flapjacks made with chia seeds, and my particular favorite flavor is sea salt. You know, being on sea, of course.
The ocean, you don't get enough.
Don't get enough of that, yeah. But as it happens, you know, the taste is just like I've always got a bit of a sweet tooth, and I love my chocolate and sweets, but I know that I can't always eat that, and so these flapjacks make me feel a little bit healthier. But also, they're with the chia seeds, you get a bit more protein, and you get a lot more of the electrolytes with the salt and some of the other ingredients they have. So it's it's probably one of my guilty pleasures every day.
Yeah, every day. Very nice. Love it. So guys, we are near the end of the show. We have the prize section last. Our last winner was on YouTube, was Nenny81. We're trying to get hold of you, but we don't have your information. So if you can contact us via email from our website, that would be great. And this week we have the chance to win again. So the terms and conditions are in the description of this video. The first person to write in the live chat the correct answer wins. And we will contact you via YouTube. So please have a way to contact you in your YouTube. The question is, guys, get ready. What is the number on the deck of the Malizia Sea Explorer? Write your answer in the live chat. What is the number on the deck of the Malizia Sea Explorer? All of the prizes will be sent at the end of the Vendée Globe. And we are back next week, guys, 6 p.m. on Monday, 6 p.m. CET. Please like and subscribe to the channel if you are enjoying the content. Thank you so much, Cole. Thank you, Will, for joining. Maybe next week there's a baby. Will, who knows?
Yay!
And next week, Cole, you will be joining us from your boat, I think, if you can join us. Almost.
I think, well, weather dependent, so we will see. If it's going upwind, I probably won't leave.
Fair enough. Yeah, we will see you next week. But thank you so much, guys, for joining. Thank you, everyone, for listening. And see you next week. Ciao.
Bye.
Ciao!
I stopped. So it should be done.
Is it done?
I think so.
Can I breathe?